Breaking from Westminster tonight, a storm is brewing inside Britain's ruling party. Health Secretary Wes Streeting has publicly denied plotting a leadership challenge against Prime Minister Keir Starmer after reports emerged of leaks from inside Number 10, suggesting growing tension and mistrust at the very top of the Labour government. What began as quiet whispers in parliamentary corridors has now turned into a national political drama, one that could shape the very future of British leadership. It started early this week, when political journalists began hearing about Number 10 briefings, alleged leaks suggesting that Streeting, a popular figure within Labour's modern wing, was quietly building support for a potential leadership bid. The claims were vague but powerful. Internal memos, late-night calls, quiet meetings. Then came the headline that set Westminster ablaze, Streeting positioning for leadership allies, testing waters. Within hours, broadcasters and political commentators flooded the airwaves. Was this the beginning of a leadership crisis, or just another example of Westminster gossip spun out of control? Wes Streeting stepped before the cameras the next morning, his voice measured but firm. "Let me be absolutely clear. I am not plotting against the Prime Minister. I serve in this government because I believe in delivering for the British people, not in political games." Yet his denial only deepened curiosity. Why had this story gained so much traction? And who exactly was behind the leaks? Inside Downing Street, aides scrambled to contain the fallout. The Prime Minister's inner circle reportedly viewed the leaks as a targeted attempt to destabilize the government at a delicate moment. Sources within Labour told the BBC that trust between Number 10 and senior ministers had already been strained, particularly after difficult weeks managing NHS reforms, economic setbacks, and falling approval ratings. Streeting, often described as one of Labour's most media-savvy ministers, has long been seen as a rising star, a politician capable of bridging generational divides within the party. His charisma, direct style, and centrist tone appeal to voters beyond Labour's traditional base. But those same traits, to some inside Number 10, make him a potential rival. Political historian Dr. Eleanor Hayes put it bluntly: when a party senses weakness at the top, ambition always finds oxygen. Even denials can become part of the narrative, because in politics, perception is everything. For Prime Minister Keir Starmer, this episode comes at a difficult time. After a year of balancing post-election expectations, economic challenges, and foreign policy turbulence, his leadership faces its toughest test, yet not from opposition benches, but from within his own ranks. In recent weeks, polls have shown a gradual decline in public trust in the government's economic management. The cost of living crisis remains a dominant issue, and health system reforms have triggered debate across constituencies. Insiders say Starmer has grown increasingly cautious, surrounding himself with loyal advisors and limiting media appearances. This has fueled perceptions, fair or not, that communication between Number 10 and senior departments has weakened. Streeting's growing public profile, from NHS funding speeches to interviews on education reform, has only heightened speculation that a new generation of Labour ministers may be positioning themselves for the post-Starmer era. This isn't the first time internal divisions have haunted a British government, from Thatcher's cabinet tensions in the late 1980s to the Blair-Brown rivalry of the 2000s. Political history reminds us that leadership crises rarely begin in public. They begin in whispers. Experts note that modern politics amplifies everything. A tweet, a headline, a text message leak, each can ripple across the media landscape in minutes. And in this digital age, silence becomes a story of its own. Political strategist Simon Brandt told Sky News, "Starmer's greatest challenge isn't rebellion, it's narrative control. When headlines suggest a split, the public begins to believe it, even before the facts are confirmed." As the weekend approached, political reporters published details of what they described as briefings traced back to Number 10. These briefings allegedly portrayed Streeting as overambitious, a man too focused on personal profile. Labour officials quickly pushed back, accusing certain advisers of feeding journalists misleading stories to deflect criticism from the government's current difficulties. Privately, allies of both men exchanged phone calls urging restraint, but the damage was already done. The story had legs, and it wasn't going away. That evening, a BBC political correspondent summarized the moment perfectly. It's not about whether Wes Streeting is plotting, it's about why people think he might be. The story reveals more about the government's insecurity than about Streeting's ambition. Across social media, the reaction was immediate. Supporters of Streeting praised him as a modern voice unafraid to challenge the status quo. Critics, meanwhile, accused him of undermining party unity during a fragile period for the nation. Inside Labour, MPs were divided. Some argued that the rumours were manufactured to silence dissent, an attempt by Starmer loyalists to maintain tight control. Others insisted that Streeting had been too visible, too outspoken, and perhaps too confident for a cabinet subordinate. An anonymous MP was quoted saying, "It's never the denial that matters, it's the fact we're even having this conversation." That tells you something about the mood inside the party. Even opposition leaders seized the moment. Conservative and Reform UK figures mocked Labour's turmoil, saying the ruling party was fighting itself rather than governing the country. The Westminster press gallery thrives on moments like this, the mix of intrigue, denial, and power struggle. Newspapers ran headlines like Starmer's inner circle in panic and Streeting. Plot rumours. Shake Labour morning talk shows debated the meaning of briefings and the culture of controlled leaks within modern politics. Meanwhile, analysts drew attention to the broader picture, the fragility of loyalty in politics, and the hunger of the 24-hour media cycle. In an age where perception can outrun truth, even a baseless rumor can damage credibility. Political journalist Laura Kensington said, "When you have a government under pressure, every whisper becomes a warning. Every rumor becomes a weapon." Determined not to appear defensive, Wes Streeting took to national media for a rare interview. Calm, composed, and direct, he told the BBC's Sunday Politics, "I have full confidence in the Prime Minister. My focus is on delivering for the NHS, not leadership fantasies cooked up by anonymous briefers." The quote was widely shared, and it landed well. Viewers praised his professionalism, while commentators noted his growing skill in crisis management. But some inside Labour weren't convinced. One senior advisor told The Guardian, "He handled it brilliantly, which is exactly why Number 10 is nervous." Behind that remark lies a political truth as old as Westminster itself. Sometimes, competence can look like ambition. In the days that followed, Starmer and Streeting reportedly held a private meeting at Downing Street described as tense but necessary. Both men emerged without comment, but insiders said the conversation focused on unity, loyalty, and message discipline. Later that evening, Downing Street released a brief statement saying, "The Prime Minister and Health Secretary are fully aligned on the government's priorities. The focus remains on delivery for the British public." But behind the official calm, unease persisted. Parliamentary aides spoke of an atmosphere thick with mistrust, where even routine cabinet discussions felt cautious and controlled. Political analysts believe this episode reveals a deeper shift within Labour. The party, once united under the shared goal of defeating the Conservatives, is now adjusting to the reality of governing under intense scrutiny. Every minister wants to be seen as dynamic, every backbencher as relevant, and that means internal competition is inevitable. Professor Amelia Grant of King's College London summarized it succinctly. Streeting's denial might close the story today, but it opens a question about tomorrow: who represents Labour's future? As Britain faces economic challenges, NHS reforms, and diplomatic recalibration abroad, the government's strength now depends on its ability to project unity. For Keir Starmer, the next few months will test not just his policies but his authority as leader. Beyond the political theatre, there's a personal story here, that of two men navigating the weight of expectation. Wes Streeting, once a youth activist from East London, rose through resilience and discipline, representing a generation that values pragmatism over ideology. Keir Starmer, the former prosecutor turned Prime Minister, embodies control, order, and cautious leadership. Both share ambition. Both seek stability. But in politics, even shared values can breed rivalry. A senior Labour source told ITV News, "It's not betrayal, it's proximity. Ambition and loyalty live side by side in this building, and sometimes they clash." By the week's end, Westminster settled outwardly. At least, the immediate crisis appeared contained. Streeting continued his public duties. Starmer returned to economic policy meetings. The headlines slowly shifted to other matters. But within the halls of Parliament, whispers haven't faded, simply grown quieter, waiting for the next moment of weakness. Next rumour, the next spark. Because in the ever-spinning cycle of British politics, stories like this never truly end. Pause. Set and return when power begins to wobble. As the lights dim in Westminster tonight, one truth remains clear. Power in politics is not only about holding office, it's about controlling narrative. Wes Streeting's denial may have silenced the speculation for now, but the episode leaves behind questions about the government's cohesion, trust, and the future of leadership within Labour. And for Britain, a nation still navigating uncertainty, the stability of its leaders remains not just a political story, but a national one. This is the story of Westminster, where silence speaks, loyalty shifts, and one headline can redraw the map of power overnight.